All right, welcome everybody to the first episode of New England Road Talk. I'm Conrad Leger from Environmental Partners, and with me today I have Art Baker from Indus and Bobby Betsold from All States Materials Group. How's it going, guys?
Good to be here, Conrad.
Going great. My pleasure to be here, Conrad. Thanks for starting this.
So just to kind of get started, I want to talk about, where this idea came from of having this video vlog, whatever the heck it is. The three of us have had a lot of conversations over the years, and with the fact that we've kind of all been locked down, we're getting into the winter months here of 2020, and every time we talk, it seems like I learned something new from you guys. So putting something on video so that people can look at during this time period where everybody's going to kind of be locked in place. I think it's a good idea, and hopefully, the goal of this thing for me is that every time we get on, and whoever's listening to this, I'm hoping that they learn something new, either about infrastructure or just about roads, or what they're doing in the municipal market.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
That sounds. Go ahead, Bobby.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's when you first reached out on this, it's a great thing. As you said, we're all kind of locked down and have been, and the interaction just hasn't quite been there like normal. And so any way we can get out and talk amongst us, but also have some outreach to to the industry in general, and share some information is always good.
Absolutely. And I think, life as we know it has changed. 9 months ago, I don't think, I know I, for one, didn't even know what the heck Zoom was. And, here we are in a Zoom meeting, and there's just a lot of different ways we've learned to communicate with each other. So I think, unlike a webinar, which is typically an hour or more, these short podcasts are a great way to teach and learn and communicate together to try to increase our skills.
Absolutely. So, there's a couple things that I want to start with here. First off, I was going to get into asking you guys to, give a little bit about your background, your bios, but instead of doing that and making this all about us, I think, I'd like to put some links down below for our bios or for our LinkedIn pages, just in case somebody's new to the area or not from this region and want to find out who we are and what our backgrounds are. So let's kind of get right into it. I wanted to talk today. Obviously, we're in the middle of COVID. So I wanted to talk about COVID and the industry of construction and the industry, what municipalities are dealing with. So Art, why don't you talk about how COVID has kind of affected, the construction industry, because you guys are both in construction.
Yeah, one of the statistics I saw in my little bit of research that I'd done, American General Contractors has a survey they did, and Massachusetts was the fifth state most impacted by construction losses. We were at like minus 37%. So, it's definitely a huge impact to the industry. It's a huge impact to the states and the local towns. And, us contractors, Bobby will talk a little bit as well, but, just something as simple as, the time required to enforce all the different regulations with COVID, just a tremendous amount of pressure on you to learn new things. Employees not wanting to travel out of state, out of fear when this thing first kicked off. There's just been a lot of things that have changed, uncertainty of budgets. When this first hit, and as people started spending money on things they didn't normally start spending, didn't have to spend money on normally, it was feared that they wouldn't have enough money to take care of their roads. Fortunately, I think we've gotten over that hurdle, and people have understood the importance of maintaining their infrastructure, and they found a way to fund road work in general.
Yeah, I do. I agree completely. It's the timing of all of this starting in March. It was really when we normally would be ramping up. The winter time typically is kind of the quieter time, obviously here in New England, snow on the ground, and not really our construction season. So, March, here it is, COVID hits, and now we're faced with dealing with this pandemic, and like everybody, the uncertainty and not knowing, is this going to be something that's going to affect us for a couple weeks, a couple months, a couple years, but also now trying to kick off the start of a construction season and bringing crews back full force. As Art mentioned, budgets being delayed, budgets being cut, the overall uncertainty at the beginning, and then throughout the construction season, just kind of the moving target. Like a lot of industries, things just evolved over the season. I think overall, we as an industry, the municipalities, the state, and the contractors adapted well, but it's certainly been a big change in that. I think we're certainly more prepared as we go into, look ahead towards next season, which we certainly can talk a lot more about. But it's had a huge impact for everybody, and how we've had to change our industry and our approach to a lot of things.
Yeah. Art, what did you find as the biggest challenge was at the beginning of COVID? Not maybe it's for you, maybe it's for your company overall in the construction industry. What did you see as what was the biggest challenge at the beginning?
I mean, at the beginning, I think the biggest challenge was just that unknown. We didn't know exactly how COVID was going to affect us. We didn't know, what was going on with the reports. We didn't know, somebody got a cough. Do you take them and get them tested right away? And then the impacts of what do you do with everybody else that the contact tracing. If somebody did think they had COVID, it kind of stifled us. It made us kind of our crews. We had to manage the crews, restructure the crews, reschedule jobs. The towns had the same issue, and sometimes they had to cancel work. We'd get up, we'd be headed out to a job, and we get a call, hey, we can't have you come today. So it really just had a major impact on trying to learn how to communicate, whether there was an actual possibility of a COVID case. And I think the more we've all learned about the virus, I think it's gotten much easier. We're all essential workers. I just can't say enough how, I think we've all done a great job working through it because, I don't know too many people locally that were impacted, but I think everybody's doing a pretty good job of protecting themselves and making sure to protect their crews and everybody that they come around.
Yeah, I think for me personally in the engineering industry, I think, it was a complete overhaul. You had companies that were very reliant on going into the office and working on the network, off the network for all these large CAD files or GIS files. For us, it was a complete change. Look at us today. We're all on a Zoom call in different parts of the state or different parts of New England. And, especially in the engineering industry, this was like unheard of at the beginning of this thing. You'd be driving out to each individual client site, meeting with the client for project meetings. Obviously in person, face-to-face communication was how everything got done. But now, I mean, there's pros and cons of everything. And one of the pros of this whole pandemic is the fact that, video communication and the time that you spend in the car and, traveling to and from sites, I think is going to be really mitigated at the end of this thing.
I agree completely in that. It certainly changed a lot. The start of the season, normally we'd be out there, and I think for all three of us, we'd be out there. You go to a site, you're going to look at a potential candidate for a project or things, and you hop in the vehicle and you drive the road and you talk and all that. And now COVID hits, and it's either you're going to you get the list emailed to you, you get on the phone, or even the whole thing of being in separate vehicles, driving down the same road, one in front of the other, talking as you're driving down the road.
Done that before.
I was just going to say, Bobby, we did a lot of that.
It's something that you never would have thought of. And, and those type things, or just how you interact with crews and being able to enter buildings, bidding, I think that was a huge change. And I think municipalities did a great job of adapting to that, and moving to, how bids are dropped off, how they're opened, bid openings via, whether it be Zoom or any type of, web platform, all these type things. And again, I think there's certainly been changes that have happened that are going to be good long-term changes. So I think there's positives that we can take out of this. I think there's improvements that have been made. I certainly look forward to being able to get back to, gathering and having, highway association meetings and industry events and those type things. That's where a lot of this interaction, anytime, as Conrad, you said in the beginning, when we get together and talk and do that, that's why I was most excited about doing this, in terms of the podcast and giving this a go, is just because it's a chance to talk and interact, and and hopefully we can start bringing on some guests and getting some other people in as well for that down the road, and we can talk more about that.
Yeah, I think that is one of the benefits of this type of platform, is that, we could bring in people from all over the place. It could be, people locally that have experience in certain sectors. We just spitballing, the three of us, we were talking about all these different ideas, talking to people nationally and regionally on, ADA and specific roadway treatments and all the testing that goes on nationally and maybe even internationally. I think in this platform, I think it's really going to work well to distribute a lot of information that people would have to travel to conferences to get to. So, I'm really looking forward to progressing this in the future. You know, let's kind of change gears here and get into what we specialize in. You know, like I was saying, I want to bring this into a lot of different directions. But I think, you know, obviously the three of us work a lot in pavement. You know, me in pavement management, you guys in the construction industry with doing the work and preserving the roads. So one thing, a topic I wanted to touch on right off the bat is, you know, what could municipal folks be doing right now to prepare themselves, even though that roadway work and pavement management is kind of all on the back burner right now because snow is in the process and in the forefront. You know, Art, you know, your background being a public works director, what could they be doing right now to start preparing themselves for the spring work?
Yeah, and so, you know, yes, they're into their snow and ice season, but we're also into the budgeting season, and that's where, you know, they're designing their road program. They're trying to put together what they want to do, you know, next season. And the biggest thing I can stress is getting those bids out early. You know, as a past public works director, I can't tell you how many times August would roll around, beginning of September, I'd see I had some additional funding, and now I'd want to put out a bid for a road job. And at that time of the year, it gets too late. By the time you go through the bidding cycle and award a contract, it just becomes too late to do a lot of that work. The earlier you can get those bids out, usually the better pricing you're going to get earlier in the season anyway. And then number two, you'll be able to get scheduled on time, and the work will be able to get done, you know, in a timely fashion, and you won't be behind the 8 ball.
100%. You know, I think that, and last year that was, I think, another part of the big challenge and things that happened is that because of the uncertainty with budgeting and, you know, people who hadn't necessarily gotten bids out, you know, who weren't ready and didn't have the budget set, that caused a lot of lapse. And, you know, and I think there were certainly a good amount of municipalities who it wasn't until the end of the season that they were able to get their jobs ready to go. And at that point in time, you know, we're faced with a very short construction season here in New England.
And I think one of the biggest hurdles, you know, for the public works folks is the whole calendar year versus fiscal year. You know, I think they struggle a little bit with that. I know I did as a past public works director. So I think that's even more, you know, trying to get those bids out early. At least you know your costs. You know what your costs are going to be for these road projects early in the season, and that way you can make a lot of intelligent decisions throughout the year on, you know, what work you're going to do. Even if you're not 100% sure about a project, you know, put it together, get it out to bid so you know your costs and you can evaluate it toward some of your other projects during the year.
So I think for me, you know, my tip to people would be to start updating their pavement management program. So obviously putting in the work, the construction work that they did last year, making sure that all of your data and all of your information is up to date. And I know, you know, and I kind of want to bounce this back to you guys, but I know a lot of the public works directors and a lot of the folks out there will actually be hesitant to put out the bids because they're going to say, we don't know what our budgets are yet because of the whole COVID situation. So what would your response be to kind of saying that? Obviously, you know, there's a lot of different funding sources out there. You know, we work, you know, a lot in Massachusetts in Chapter 90. You know, what are you guys hearing about that? And, you know, in terms of the funding from state to state, and, you know, what would you say to them about their bids not wanting to put out bids because they're not sure of what their budget's going to be?
And I think that's a major challenge, Conrad, because you know, you just mentioned Chapter 90 in Mass specifically. I'm pretty sure, I don't know if it's all the districts, but some of the districts actually make sure you have to put a project in for approval before you actually put it out to bid. And so that becomes another challenge. So, you know, trying to work with your Chapter 90 folks in Mass, Chapter 90, I think the good news on Chapter 90 funding, at least that I'm hearing through my network, is months ago, they talked about possibly reducing the funding available for Chapter 90. And now that the latest news that I'm hearing is that it's probably going to be funded at the same level, which is not great news, but it's still good news because it doesn't sound like it's going to get cut. Hopefully some of the other states, you know, Connecticut, I know with their Town Aid for Roads program, I'm not sure what the status of that is right now. And maybe that's a discussion we can have in a future episode with all the different New England states.
Agreed. You know, and I'm hearing a lot of the same things. Art, you know, it's even this year, you know, there's a lot of questions, and Chapter 90, I know, was kind of a late release, I guess, shall we say, this year. You know, across all the states, I think everybody's facing the same question mark right now. You know, obviously we've recently heard about the next stimulus that's coming out, and there is some aid in there. It hasn't been totally defined yet where it's going to be, but I think anything right now that goes to the states is going to have some type of trickle down effect to help shore up budgets. Because every state, doesn't matter where you are, we're here in New England, anywhere you are in the country, there's been drops in tax revenues and all of those type things, all the funding sources. That money's got to come from somewhere. So, I think it's something where we're certainly optimistic. The states have been trying to support the municipalities, and same thing, municipalities are trying to be creative. And I think the other thing is, though, is this also plays right to a lot of what we're going to talk about, in our next episode in terms of pavement preservation, and utilizing some of these alternative treatments to help stretch those budget dollars. And not to steal too much about what we're going to get into at that next episode, but I think there's ways for municipalities to get creative, and hopefully we can give them some tools to help do that and think a little bit more on how they're able to spend their budget dollars, and get more done and continue. I think, and again, Art, you had your background as public works director, and Conrad working with a lot of communities on the pavement management side. The biggest thing I would stress in terms of that is the cost of foregoing 1 year of maintenance is so much greater than just being able to do something. So if you're able to, even if it's a reduced program, trying to figure out some way to do something and not just lose an entire year, I think is critical in terms of what people are doing.
Right. Yeah. And I think, just looking at how these types of things historically have kind of laid out is, obviously people are fearful of their budgets and what's going to happen to them. But if you don't have the information that you need ready and at your disposal, a plan in place for if you get fully funded, then you're not going to have any idea of what to do if your budget gets cut. And usually what I've seen in my experience is that the first thing that gets cut is the preservation projects, which I think is actually the opposite of what really should be done. Everybody's always looking for bad roads to pave or redo. And again, we'll get into this in the next episode, but this is all about being prepared for the spring season. So, having an understanding of where you stand in terms of your overall road network, being able to quantify that information so that you can project that to decision makers and constituents in general. And then, being ready for the changes that are going to come. We've already seen a number of budgets be cut from, clients that I work with, clients that you guys work with. So I think it's really just getting into a mode of being prepared for what's coming, whether it's good or bad. If that stimulus package hits and there's a lot of money in there for funding for roadways, they're going to be looking for shovel-ready projects. They're not going to be looking for you to sit there and plan for 6 months to be able to do the projects.
Right. And great point, Conrad. Like looking ahead, I've heard a lot of stories about how some of these state funded programs and federal funded programs are going to require you to have a pavement management plan in order to qualify to receive the funds, to make sure that you're utilizing that funding in the best way possible. So I think that's another great point.
The shovel ready is also, I think, a great point, because if we look back a few years ago, again, here in Massachusetts, and not to talk too much just about one state, but when that extra funding came out, one of the conditions was shovel ready projects. So having your specifications in place, having your roads that, your candidates that you plan on doing, and from a contracting side, certainly we hate to see a bid or a project either cut or reduced or not happen, but it's a whole lot easier to deal with that than to deal with it's August, September, and now the bid comes out and you go through it. You have no chance at that point in time. So at least if you're ready, you have the project. It certainly is not something that you want to have where the project gets cut, but at least you have a chance to get it done if the funding doesn't come through or if it gets reduced. You have no chance if you wait.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, we're going to try to keep these episodes to about 20 minutes a piece. We're not going to run too much longer than that. And, I'm really looking forward to getting into this and diving into it over the next couple months. And hopefully we'll be able to provide constant content for people who like it. Please make sure you go down below and subscribe to the channel, and feel free to write in the comments as well if there's any ideas of things that you want to do. I know Bobby and Art and I have talked about a lot of different ideas of content that we can bring to this program, and hopefully people find it educational and it'll be fun.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, same here. It's I think we got through this first one is trying to get a little bit of background is always kind of the tough and lay the groundwork, but really looking forward to getting into more of the nuts and bolts of everything that's, our normal day to day.
All
right, guys. Well, thank you. That's that'll wrap up episode 1 of New England Road Talk, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks.
Take
Stay
care,
safe,
everyone.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.